Several folks came to me during this Lent saying it hasn't been a very good Lent. And I have been pondering that throughout Lent. It hasn't been a very good Lent. What does that mean? What does that mean? What constitutes a good Lent? That everything go well? That fasting, abstaining from meat would be relatively easy? That there wouldn't be any issues in the family? I mean, I don't want to be insulting, but what constitutes a good Lent versus one that isn't so good? I look back on the beginning of Lent, and I remember our parishioners, they're also parishioners of the parish where I grew up. They lost their 19-year-old son in a car accident. He had nothing to do with it. He was an innocent person. The other driver was at fault, and there were alcohol, I believe, was involved. We had their funeral at Our Lady, the funeral at Our Lady of Mount Carmel. The grief was so heavy, it was like you could cut it with a knife. I remember at the beginning of Lent, in the same week, Father Greg Menegay, wonderful man, good priest, pastor of Blessed Sacrament in Scottsdale, lost his sister. And I don't know what happened to her. She was around my age and gone. We had the funeral at St. Mary Magdalene. Very, very difficult. And then the same week, or I think the following week on a Monday, Father Dan Vanyo, the priest who will come here as the parochial administrator very soon, lost his father. And we had the funeral. Now his father was aged, but he was gone. This was the beginning of Lent. And through this period of Lent, one of our parishioners, a fairly young woman, has been battling cancer. And right now, the outlook, the prognosis is not good. Another person that I heard of over at the parish where I grew up lost his battle with ALS. We know that during this time of Lent, Stephen Hawking, the great physicist, he's also an atheist, lost his battle with ALS. He had been immobilized for decades. And this man over at this parish in Tempe lost his battle. But this man's battle and the loss of that battle was a complete antithesis of the death of Stephen Hawking. Stephen Hawking, in a sense, in many regards, railed against God, saying that we don't need God to explain this ordered universe. This other gentleman surrendered his life to God. He was ready to go home, and he went home yesterday. Last week, one of our parishioners told me that she was going down south and asked me to pray. She was going down south to Tucson to be with her daughter, an adult woman, a woman whom I know, and I had no idea of any of this, because her daughter was to testify in a trial, a murder trial. And the murderer, the man who committed this heinous act, murdered her friend right in front of her, then held her captive until she was able to find an opening and escape, but not before being bludgeoned by a big rock from this murderer. This woman was going to be testifying. When we say it hasn't been a good Lent, again, I don't know what that means. I don't know what Lent is supposed to look like. I think of Lent 2 years ago. My mother died on February 3rd, and then her funeral was the following week. and we buried her on Fat Tuesday, and her funeral had many priests, the diocesan bishops celebrated the Mass. It was, in a sense, very festive, like Fat Tuesday would be. And then the next day was Ash Wednesday. The hammer drops. What is it supposed to look like? I don't know. Let me read something to you. The hymn for noon prayer today, right? Today is Good Friday. Noon prayer, midday prayer in the Liturgy of the Hours. This is a hymn that's an American folk hymn. And this is what this hymn says. Jesus walked this lonesome valley, and I believe that's the name of this hymn, the Lonesome Valley. Jesus walked this lonesome valley. He had to walk it by himself. Oh, nobody else could walk it for him. He had to walk it by himself. We must walk this lonesome valley. We have to walk it by ourselves. Oh, nobody else can walk it for us. We have to walk it by ourselves. We must go and stand. You must go and stand your trial. You have to stand it by yourself. Oh, nobody else can stand it for you. You have to stand it by yourself. Friends, whatever a good Lent or a not so good Lent means, now is the time to pray. Now is the time to take it to the cross.